Today we are ranking motorcycle rider priorities in 2026. You can think of things like modifying your bike, putting a fancy exhaust on it, even the purchase price or insurance cost. We're gonna give you the lowdown on everything you should be worried about and what you shouldn't be worried about, because it actually turns out between the new rider and the experienced rider, those priorities are kind of different, right, Logan?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy when you think about just how dramatically your priorities shift as you grow as a rider, as you get more seasons under your belt, hours and hours and hours of seat time. I know my priorities have certainly changed.
Yeah, like mine, I mean, if you were to tell me the kind of riding I do now versus back then, I'd be like, well, my priorities are way out of whack. But let's talk about the one that everyone wants to know about, and that is power. Logan, where does power fall for the new rider in terms of priority? It's gotta be pretty important, right?
Yeah, so power, I think, universally speaking, is the #1 priority for new riders.
Wow. Starting off strong for today.
Starting off strong. I think it's just easy to think, no matter what type of riding you want to do, no matter what your budget is or your age or life experience, too much power is going to limit your ability to grow as a rider, right?
Yeah.
And whether you're a wannabe fast boy getting a beginner sport bike or maybe in a baby adventure bike, too much power is going to increase your risk. It's going to make it harder to learn. You're going to be more scared of the machine. Less powerful bikes are more compliant, more forgiving, more easy to get along with as a new rider.
Yeah, and I think for new riders as well, there's the risk of if you go too powerful, you may not stay with motorcycling, right? If you get a bike that's too torquey, it may scare you. So really thinking about that engine layout, that configuration, the power, probably is the #1 thing you want to think about.
Definitely.
But for the experienced rider, we're actually going to put it #4 today. It's not even podium places for priorities, and I think that kind of reflects like my own experience today, where like my personal street bike makes 85 horsepower. It's an adventure bike, it's got 2 cylinders, and I'm plenty happy with it because it fits what I need it to do, and that's similar to your Transalp. I think it actually makes more peak power than my bike.
Maybe a little bit, and I think when you get older, power becomes one part of the greater performance equation, right? How does the bike feel? How is it compliant? How's its character, right? I think the older you get to appreciate the whole equation more than just the power alone.
100%, yeah, because like there's gearing, there's torque, there's cylinder count, there's weight of the bike, there's wheelbase. I mean, all of that's gonna increase and decrease the level of fun that you have on the bike, which is what power is part of the equation. So yeah, as you get into riding, you're just gonna be a little more nuanced with power. And I haven't really ever seen guys who've been riding for like 10 plus years still really caring about, peak power. That's not as important to riders as you get along. But let's move on to the next priority. Next up is seat height. This is one you hear all the time, especially for new riders. We get a lot of it on our Discord server. We hear a lot about it. We actually include it in all of our reviews because people want to know about it. Logan, where does seat height fall for the new rider?
So this one is sort of contrary to what a lot of new riders think. We're gonna rank it 6.
Whoa.
6 out of 7, so near the bottom on importance. Yeah, kind of a spicy opinion, a hot take, if you will.
A hot take, wow.
But hear me out. If you're limiting yourself on power as a new rider anyway, you're looking in more, beginner class bikes. They're all kind of the same in regards to seat height.
Sure.
Most of them between 30 and 31 inches, maybe at the tallest. And that's a pretty small variance. And like, same with power as an experienced rider, seat height is incredibly nuanced. So it's not just the exact seat height of the bike, but the weight, the width of the seat, how you can kind of lean it over, be comfortable on one foot. I think it's not quite as important as people make it out to be.
Yeah, and that's a really good point in that if you're already looking in that beginner category of bike, they've already thought through the seat height for you. That's already gonna be a bike that is gonna fit reasonably well and reasonably comfortably. You only start to see those kind of like extreme ergonomics on more flagship machines, on big adventure bikes, big sport bikes, hardcore bikes per se. And so for the experienced rider, we're actually gonna rate it dead last, because if you know how to ride, seat height really doesn't matter very much. I've seen tiny like 5'1" women riding BMW GSs and whipping them around. I've seen really short guys riding top shelf Panigales and stuff. It's not as big of a deal because you know how to manage it. And really there's a bit of a caveat for seat height for experienced riders, and that is the overall ergonomic fit.
Definitely.
Right? Because it's only part of the story of how tall the seat is, how wide's the bike, how do the handlebars reach out to you? Are your feet forward or behind you, right?
Yeah, I think as someone who's not even that tall, 5'11" or whatever, the distance between the seat and the foot pegs is huge for me. So I can only imagine how challenging that would be for someone 6'4" or whatever. So it's those little things that contribute to how you feel on a bike significantly more than just the seat height alone.
Yeah, I would say go and sit on these bikes and feel how they feel in person. That's definitely going to be the number one thing. Next up is price, purchase price. And this one is a bit contentious. It's very personal too. Everybody's finances are different. And so we want to be cognizant of the fact that for some people, price is extremely important. And for some people, price isn't as big of a deal. So we're painting broad strokes here. Definitely. Logan, where does price fall for the new rider?
So for new riders, price is going to rank pretty high, the number 2 spot. And again, yeah, it is relative. Everybody's in their unique situation. But generally speaking, a new rider, usually think a younger rider, you know, you're newer in a career, maybe you've got some other financial priorities you want to sort out before getting the 5-figure motorcycle. So I think purchase price is pretty important for a new rider.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because most new bikes nowadays, after tax, title, license, all that, end up creeping up to 5 figures. I remember beginner bikes could be bought for $5 or $6 grand out the door, you know, your $2,500 Ninja 250s, all that sort of things. And I think those days are firmly behind us, unfortunately. For the experienced rider today, we're going to say price is actually the most important thing, but it's actually more about the value of the motorcycle. Because I think of it this way, Logan, like an experienced motorcycle rider can probably go and, you know, within reason, pick up whatever they want to pick up, right? But they're really thinking about like, what am I going to use this bike for? So we were talking about this pre-production, like, I guess I could go and buy a brand new Panigale V4R. I'd be like, wow, this is the most superlative thing. Right. But then I think about writing that check and I'm like, I know I could get 90% of this for half the price or even a third of the price. And so to me, I can't justify doing that because I understand the value of it. How does this sit for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think as an experienced rider, like you're opened up to a lot more options. So you have to be a little bit more critical or analytical when cross shopping. You know, compared to a beginner motorcycle, there's, you know, a handful of bikes that are kind of the known platforms to start on. It's important, but there's less room for exploration, right? Yeah. And it's like, yeah, if you can have any motorcycle you want based on your experience level, it takes a little bit more time to think critically and find the best value and what's going to serve your life versus just buying, the biggest, baddest motorcycle solely because you can.
Yeah.
You know?
But price is, between new riders and experienced riders, I'd say one of the most important things for sure. Can't deny that. Moving on. All right, this next one is for all the CF Moto owners out there. We're talking electronics and features. Cool little light up things, cruise control, fancy TFT displays, traction control, lean sensor, this, blah, blah. All the fun farkles and cool stuff that people are putting on motorcycles nowadays. Logan, where does that fall for the new rider?
For the new rider, electronics and features are gonna fall pretty low on the list today in the number 5 spot.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, they're pretty unnecessary. Yeah. And you took the CF Moto words right out of my mouth. That was gonna be my example, where it's like, sure, they throw things in to sweeten the deal, you know, kind of incentivize people to gravitate towards one model versus another. But at the end of the day, ABS, maybe some very, very, very basic traction control, if at all, is really all you need as a new rider. You're focusing on throttle input, braking, clutch control. All that is very separate of these fancy features and farkles that just make a bike maybe feel a little bit more premium, but are at the end of the day pretty unnecessary for a new rider.
Yeah, because you're talking about bikes that make between 50 and 60 horsepower, something like that. They're not really going to be putting you in a situation where you need advanced slide control and traction control, all this sort of thing. Again, nice to have, absolutely not necessary. People have been buying and riding beginner motorcycles for decades now, and many of those throughout the years didn't have anywhere near the kind of stuff they have nowadays. You really don't need an IMU on your brand new beginner bike. It's not really necessary. Again, those are nice to have features. But for the experienced rider, we're actually going to be putting electronics and features as number 2. We think it's the second most important priority. And the reason for that is you've been around the block, you've been riding for a while, you know, it's nice to have those things, especially on machines that come with a lot of power. You want something that feels substantial and nice and just premium. And, you know, typically if you're a little bit older, you know, you kind of feel like you've earned those things, you know? Sure. Like I kind of feel like, you know, if I'm gonna get some brand new bike, I don't really want it to be some super basic 12-year-old, 15-year-old bike. I'm like, you know what? I worked hard, I deserve it, you know? And that's how you end up in the BMW pipeline and then you never get out of there.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's like, if I'm buying a new car, it has to have heated seats. I'll need them 3 days a year in Austin, but it has to have it.
Yeah, totally. And I think, especially if you've been riding for a while and you start getting used to those nicer bikes, it's really hard to go back. You know, it's really tough. You know, like I've got the, you know, as a side car note, I've got the Cowboy, you know, DIY edition Dodge Ram, but it's the top trim, so it's got like the vintage seats and the leather. and it is hard to go back. So I think for the experienced rider, once you're used to those nice features, your cruise controls, your heated grips especially, I feel like it's hard to go back. It's important, it's important. And that's why they rope you in with the BMW financing. That's how they get you. 2026 is starting to feel a little different, and I can't help but wonder if this green Moto Guzzi has anything to do with it. This bike is really cool. Transverse V shaft drive, and of course, in this beautiful green paint job. It's up for grabs on YamiNoob.co as our next giveaway motorcycle. Head over to the website, click the link down below, become a member, and get your chances locked and loaded to win this bike. If that doesn't interest you, you can always pick up a hat, a t-shirt, hoodie, support the show, and every dollar you spend is an entry to win this bike subject to a multiplier. Hit that link down below. I really appreciate it. And let's get back to the show. All right, now let's discuss the ability to modify and modifications in general. How do we feel about prioritizing, doing exhausts or rear sets or levers, and it's all those sort of things that riders typically do to the bikes. The tail tidies, Logan, everybody's always doing tail tidies. For the new rider, how important is this?
So for the new rider, modification is gonna fall dead last on the list. I'm smirking because it's funny because new riders seem to be the ones that modify their bikes the most.
It's true.
And you get excited, you got the new bike, you want it to be your own, whatever. But at the end of the day, it's not gonna change your riding experience that much, right? Like putting a slip-on on a Ninja 500 is gonna net you 0.5 horsepower maybe.
If that,
and it's gonna sound, your parallel twin is just gonna sound a little bit louder. Just unnecessary. You got other things you should be concerning yourself with.
I would say if you're able to kind of like hold off on, swiping the credit card and getting the tail tidies and the slip-ons and all that, think about the future value of your next bike if you save that money, which you will inevitably upgrade, right? As a beginner rider, you're gonna have higher resale value if you don't modify this beginner bike, right? Everybody loves a stock bike if you're buying something, right? You put up your lightly used, gently modified or not modified at all Ninja 500, you're gonna get all that money back, And then you can take that money and buy the next bike because as Logan said, you just don't need any of that stuff really. It's not gonna add much to your ride, but it is funny, like beginner riders are the ones that are, mainlining Revzilla and buying the tail tidies and the exhausts and the levers and all this sort of stuff. And I'm not here to tell you like if you want to do that stuff, it makes you happy, that's great. I just think that in terms of your priorities, in terms of you buying this bike and all that, it's pretty low on the list. I don't think you should really think much about, this bike can only have a full system exhaust, so I'm not gonna get that one, I'm gonna get this one so I can do the full system. Like, don't think about that stuff too much. But for the experienced rider, we're actually gonna put it number 3, podium places. And one of the reasons we did that is because for the experienced rider, you know exactly what you want out of your bike.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what you need, you know how you want it to fit, how to sound, like you have your tastes, and the ability to change it is very important. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think too, it's like if you're a more experienced rider, the chances are you're buying a bike to have more long-term, right?
Yeah.
In which case it makes a little bit more sense to spend that time, spend that money to customize it, to tweak those touch points and things to improve your overall experience. And it's funny too, you see the difference just in the way an experienced rider modifies their bike versus a new rider. The new rider's got the Alibaba exhaust and the Amazon fake Rizoma mirrors and things. And the experienced rider has like the OEM like hard cases and the color matched hard cases and things. It's just, a completely different animal and just usually makes a little bit more sense. They're a little bit more thoughtful versus flashy.
Yeah, and it kind of fits in line with the price and value discussion too, because like an experienced rider probably has been there, done that. They spent the $3,000 on the Acura and they did the Flash and they're like, wow, that wasn't really worth, that was a lot of money to spend on for such a tiny little gain. But again, it's also like if you buy a new platform that requires flashing for it to actually feel normal, like you're an experienced rider, you already know that going in and you're like, okay, like I'm gonna buy, for example, like the R9, I know it has a dead spot in second gear, I gotta ship out the ECU, get it flashed, you're already baking that into what you're gonna do with the bike. And that's why I think for an experienced rider, like being able to modify and think about the mods is more important than for the new rider. And because you already know what you want, right? You know what tires you want, you know how you want this bike to feel. New riders, you don't know anything yet. So there's no point in modifying the bike if you don't even know what you don't know, right? So take your time with it, just keep it stock. It's more fun that way, I promise. All right, this next one, more than any of the other ones we've talked about so far, probably elicits the most conversation. Anytime this comes up in our Discord server, it just, the activity starts blowing up because people compare their rates and talk about it. It is, of course, insurance. For the new rider, how important is insurance?
Insurance is really important for the new rider. First and foremost, again, new riders are typically younger, and insurance for young people sucks.
Yes.
And as an anecdote, as someone, formerly in their 20s, now a post-20s male, I had the personal experience of my insurance premium halving just solely by being 30 years old, which is pretty cool. So again, insurance, I think a lot of people don't consider how costly it can be, especially if you're financing a new motorcycle and you need full coverage. You know, sometimes people are getting quotes that are like their monthly rate is the same as their payment for their motorcycle, which is absolutely crazy. So it's definitely something to consider to, you know, make sure you've got the right coverages, cross shop. It's very banal, like old man stuff. This is very much showing my age as a 30-year-old discussing insurance, but it's important. Long story short, it's important.
It is, and it makes a big difference, right? We have seen in discussions on the Discord and YouTube comments, like there are young guys who, you know, they've been a year or two and they want to jump up to a leader bike, but they're like 23, and then they're like, okay, I got to finance this because I can't afford it. And they're like, oh my God, I need full coverage on this bike. All of a sudden you're talking, it's going to be $1,000 plus per month to just have this
crazy.
BMW S1000RR. And I'm like, you should never put yourself in that position. That's insane. Don't do that. Yeah, definitely don't. I've seen some guys do this where they acquire the bike and then they're like, oh, I need to do insurance on it. They're like, oh my God, this is going to be so expensive. And then they go with some like sleazy liability only insurance. I'm like, that's really risky. You know, think about that. We're like, if you get crappy insurance and something happens because you didn't want to pony up the money, you might be putting yourself in a whole world of hurt. So insurance, definitely number 3. It's definitely important for the new rider. But for the experienced rider, we're going to list it as number 5. It is important, but less important than for the novice rider because, as Logan alluded to, if you're like us, in your prime of your life, in your 30s, sorry, Logan, cruising along, let's say you're married, let's say you're a homeowner, let's say you're, you know, doing stuff the right way, your credit score is good, insurance all of a sudden becomes a non-issue. You can go and buy whatever motorcycle you want, knowing that the insurance cost is not going to be a big deal. And that's a nice place to be, you know? So for all of you out there in your early 20s, you're going to work to, this is your future right here, baby. You're established, you can get whatever bike you want and know that the insurance is not going to cripple you. It's a nice feeling.
Yeah, and it's cool as you get older too, and especially if you've been with the same provider for a long time, adding vehicles like doesn't necessarily equate. Like adding a brand new vehicle makes it significantly more expensive versus severely more expensive. Like if it's only 20% more expensive to insure a whole other motorcycle, what's stopping you from adding the third, fourth, fifth bike to your garage, you know?
Totally. And then you can bundle them up with like your other insurance, you know, if you got a car, if you got a house, then all of a sudden everything becomes cheaper. Yeah, it's a good place to be. So yeah, insurance, important for the new rider, and for the experienced rider, you know, in terms of cost, not that big a deal.
Kind of an afterthought.
Yeah. All right, by process of elimination, you know we'll end up 4th on the list. We're talking dealer network. This is also something we hear a lot about. People prioritize buying one brand or another brand in terms of their dealer network. And again, by process of elimination, we limited to number 4 today. Talk us through dealer network.
So yeah, dealer network, number 4, average importance. You know, if you own a Japanese motorcycle, you probably got no issue having a dealer anywhere you live in the United States or around the world. If you are a predilection for more boutique European brand, you know, Triumph's got all their 400s now, they're nice bikes, but it may be in the back of your mind, what if I need some warranty work? What if I need some to order parts or something, you know, especially as a less experienced rider, having a dealer as a resource is a nice thing to have. You know, it might correlate to some peace of mind or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit different for an experienced rider.
I'd say so, yeah. For the experienced rider, the dealer network isn't as important. It's going to be number 6. And the reason for that is because if you're experienced, you probably already know what you're getting into, right? If, like Logan said, for example, you go and buy some MV Agusta, you're like, okay, like I know that bike's gonna need this work, and I know that this is where the dealer is, like I need to make sure I'm nearby. Or like if you buy a Honda, you're like, I'm probably never gonna visit that dealer. Have you visited the Honda dealer for anything? No, you just change the oil and it just keeps running, right? So it's dependent on the brand, it's dependent on the situation. And for the new rider, one thing that's interesting to think about for dealer network is you're probably not gonna keep that beginner bike for very long. If you buy a new Honda, new Kawasaki, I mean, once you leave the dealer after signing the papers and taking the bike home, you'll probably never see them again. Don't go for the first service. You can do that yourself. And that's the thing about the experienced rider, you know, much like myself, like I have my Triumph Daytona. You would say, oh, Triumph, it's always leaking oil, it's always having issues. But, you know, I've got the service manual. I've owned the bike for 9 years now. I'm very familiar with the platform. I do all the work myself, and so I only contact the dealer if I need a part here and there, and I can just order that. And because it's not my main bike, I can just wait for it to arrive, and then I'll install it, and it's just a little easier. So it's really not that big a deal for those of us who are doing our own work and know what you're getting into.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think an experienced rider not only has the experience to be able to work on and maintain their own bike, I think it's also just they don't have as many like new rider anxieties, right? That like being like, I need to be close to a dealer in case something happens. It's like when you've been riding for, you know, 3, 4, 5+ years, you realize like bikes are pretty well made and like rarely does it need to see a dealer. So I think it just becomes, again, sort of like the insurance, sort of a non-issue, sort of an afterthought.
Yeah. And it can kind of be like, if you are the experienced rider, you bought something brand new, you know, typically it's under warranty and it's just going to get the work done via that. But there is also like, there's, you know, with any new bike, there's a honeymoon period, especially for European bikes. We're like, nah, nothing goes wrong. This bike's great. It's like year 2, 3, 4 of owning the bike. You're like, ooh, it's starting to do some weird stuff. Ask me how I know. I've had that happen with nearly every bike, except for my trusty Ducati Scrambler Desert Sled. Weirdly enough, that was one of the most reliable bikes I ever owned, even though I beat it to hell and back.
It's Taiwanese manufacturing.
That's right. There you go. Yeah, 2-valve, Desmo, Taiwanese build quality. What do you guys think? This is our ranking for novice rider and experienced riders in terms of their priorities. Going into 2026, would you change or do anything different? Did you have different priorities in your experience level or at your novice level? Let us know down in the comments down below. Thanks so much for checking out today's video. We appreciate it. We'll catch you in the next one. See you later.